All right.
All right, and I got a blinking light recording on my side. I don't know if does it on your side, Scott. Does it show anything recording? Perfect. All right, so thank you guys so much for coming tonight, or for watching the replay version of this. My name is Clint Brown, and I live in Sioux Falls, South Dakota, and I own a couple of businesses. One's called The Bakery, which may be how you heard about this, and one of them is called Alluvio, which might be how you heard about this. On both sides of that, my obsession and my work life and my hobby is helping people grow their small businesses. And I have, through that journey, actually run into this character. Scott and I met, I think, over burgers and beer in Omaha, if I remember the first handshake, and hit it off and ended up standing out in the parking lot till way too late, talking, and have stayed friends over the years. And I thought it would be, I'll give you why I wanted to do this for you. Scott's one of those people I can go to when someone's growing and someone's scaling. He's had so much exposure, so many opportunities to do that for his own business and for other people's businesses. He's sort of part of my brain trust. And so I looked to Scott for his insight on those matters. And he's got some experience we'll talk about here that sort of qualifies him for answering some of these questions. And then the purpose of this was selfishly, and I told Scott this, I have clients who have these questions and they're like, I've got this widget, I've got this thing, and I want to sell it on a website, or how do I license it, or what do I do now? Or maybe I am selling it, but I don't like selling it, or I don't even know what that means. I just have made a thing in my garage and it's cool and people say it's cool. And all those sorts of things. So I thought, you know what, let's just have a discussion. So Scott and I chatted on the phone a couple of weeks ago, and we said, let's just do a webinar. We'll chat with each other, see if we can answer some of these questions directly and dive into this. And then we'll have a recording. We can send it out. So if you have makers in your life or inventor types, this is for them or for you. And would love for you to ask your questions. Now, if you're watching this live and you have a question down on the side, if you mouse over your face, you can leave a question. I know, for instance, Braden Bills, who we saw pop in earlier, has invented something. Braden, if I need to even bring you onto video, I will. Yours is rather on the complicated side compared to everybody else here, so this might be Stump the Chump with Scott. He might really enjoy your challenge, but be familiar with this. So anyhow, enough of the chatter. This is my buddy Scott. Scott, could you give people, and I'll fill in the blanks where I think you're missing, but could you give people some snippets of your story that help contextualize why you're into gadgets and why you were showing us a spatula a little while ago? We might bring the spatula back out, right? Who are you, and why are we talking about inventions with you?
All right. Well, thanks. Great to be here, Clint. Thank you very much. And thanks for everybody that's here and that is going to watch this recording. I guess the short answer is, this is going to seem medium to long, but the short answer is in 2001 and 2, I developed a product which was essentially an accident. It was a product called the Body Bow, which came by way of a request from a chiropractor friend of mine. And I showed him a stretching product I had made, and I didn't quite know what to do with it. It just looked really cool. It looked like a personal Pilates product. Portable personal Pilates product. And he says, that's very cool. I don't know if I could use that, but you look like you can build stuff. So would you build something that does this, hands-free therapy? So I went into my shop, my garage, and I built what he asked for. And we sold, I don't know, 12 or 15 of those. And then shipping I didn't have down because fulfillment was really difficult. It was about 6 foot tall product, 12 inches by 12 inches and 6 feet tall. So anyway, and then with a piece of the, I'll say waste, a scrap, one night at 2 in the morning, I was holding this piece of plastic and I said, wow, I can make a portable Bowflex out of this. Portable handheld Bowflex. And about 2 or 3 hours later, through the wee hours of the morning, I built a prototype for what became the Body Bow, and it sold 1 million units on infomercials over the course of 9 or 10 months. And that was in 2002 when that launched. And my wife made a deal. And this is really important for people to understand, Clint. My wife made a deal with me. She said, stop doing what you're doing professionally. When I was an air conditioning contractor at the time, she says, go get contracts with these prototypes. And I'll give you 12 months to get one contract. And in that 12 months, I got 2 or 3 contracts for infomercial placement and QVC placement. And that was the heyday of infomercials. So 1 of every 8 or 10 infomercials were working. So I won't say I lucked out, but there is something to timing, right? So yeah. I went to Vegas. I met a bunch of people at an infomercial, ERA, Electronic Retailers Association. I'm going to cite actual things, places, people, and products so that everybody gets the real, these things are real. Yeah. And what you guys have are real, is real. It's just a matter of, knowing who to go to. So I realized that whatever product I had to find the industry specific person to present to. So over the course of the last 14 years, I've launched 20 products. When I say products, I mean product, services, and businesses. So product for brevity's sake. A massage glove. I was a vendor. I had a manufacturer in Taiwan, and I was a vendor to Gaian, health and wellness Pilates and yoga company. Created a product called the JetFlex, which was another handheld fitness accessory product. Push-ups, which was a ergonomically fit push-up product I licensed to Everlast. And then a company came to us. At the time, my partner and I, we had produced a movie called Pass It On, which was essentially it was an unofficial sequel to The Secret, which I'm sure all of you are familiar with. And with those contacts and content, somebody came to us out of South Jordan, Utah, south of Salt Lake City, and said, hey, listen, we're magazine publishers. We would love to publish a magazine. And we want to call that magazine. Now listen to this. This is, I won't say profound because I don't want to pat myself on the back, but I want everyone to understand how quickly these negotiations and these ideas come and go. They said, we want to publish a magazine called Dream Makers. We can help people's dreams come true. Well, Dream Makers didn't mean anything to me. So what I said, listen, we will co-found this magazine with you if we call it Personal Development Magazine. And 6 short months later, we were in every airport newsstand in the country, North America, United States. We were international. We were in the bookstores, Books A Million, Borders Books when they were in business, Barnes and Noble. And then, and I'm just one of those guys that I see a problem, I solve it. I see a need, I fill it. I see a dream, I fulfill it. And that's the medium version of the answer. And, whether I'm lecturing in prisons or in universities or, college campuses, these are all, the process is the same 3-step process that allowed all of these 20 plus products to come to market.
Well, hopefully we'll get into some of those steps here in a little bit. I gave people the opportunity, Scott. I appreciate you sharing your story. And sort of bringing that around to us. I think it's really good you gave actual examples because it cites the sort of no bullshit path you've been on. I mean, there's so much chatter out there about ways to get rich and do sort of crazy stuff, but you don't often meet the people who've gone through the journey, signed the paperwork, done the negotiations, been on the phone calls, been in the garage prototyping. And you're one of the few that I've met who is not some theoretical nonsense. You're like, no, I actually cut this piece of metal and put this here. And then I talked to this company in China and they made it, that sort of thing. And so I really appreciate that sort of honesty and transparency.
If I may just drop in for 1 second, when I say the process is the same, I get, so for all of you that don't know me, a few of you, I recognize the names, so you know me, and I'm just like Clint, I sometimes just sink my teeth into something, my cingulate gyrus starts just locking in and I can't stop. So thank you for the indulgence.
It's the blessing and curse of being ADD.
Yes, well.
You can't focus, but when you do, damn it, you're focused.
Yes, absolutely. So thanks for understanding.
Yeah.
It also goes to music. So I'm a songwriter as well. So Nathan Osmond, Osmond's second generation, Donnie and Marie's nephew, Alan Osmond's son, is a very good friend of mine. And we've written songs that are on Spotify, YouTube, of course, iTunes. We've written and recorded songs under the same system. We had an idea. We put down some scratch tracks, essentially a model of the song. We put the band in the studio, and we produced some songs. And they're out there right now. You can listen to them on the radio. You can listen to them on Spotify. You can listen to them, iTunes. And there's not a lot of money in that unless you're touring, and I'm not a touring musician. But or if you get a commercial or a jingle on a commercial, or you got a movie placement or something, there's money there. But I think the rush of having developed something and launch it, that's where the rush comes from. Because the money may come or may not come, but the big rush in validating your creation is really what you're looking for initially, because then you know that you got the chops to go on to something else that may make some money.
Yeah. I think that kind of goes with, for people who follow Gary Vee. He's always saying, you better be in love with the journey. The money is the result of a good match between your idea and the marketplace and whatever, but you've got to really enjoy the day-to-day journey of it. And part of that journey is figuring out what's that formula for getting something spun up. And you seem to have done quite a bit of it. So I want to answer a couple of questions. I let people, I told you earlier this week I was going to throw in one of the entrepreneur groups I'm in, Scott, some questions and answer those. If you guys have any questions and are watching, please put those in the chat. If you don't, then it's just going to be Scott and I talking, which I don't mind, but I'd like to answer your questions if you have them. And so there were a couple of questions that popped in. Now the spectrum, Scott, because of the way that I marketed this, the spectrum of people who might be in here, everybody from looky-loos, right? Unless my wife happens to have a product I don't know about. Maybe she does. She's a rather private lady, but she's in here watching, all the way to people like Braden has a very complicated scientific instrument, and he's looking at the licensing path and whatnot. And I probably will connect you guys directly because it's way over my head, his needs. But I run into a lot of people who are somewhere between somewhere between idea and making a living from that idea, or making a comment in a paycheck from that idea, right? They're somewhere in the middle. They've got it on a napkin, or maybe they're selling a few at a trade show, or they make a few $100 a month. And so, they're somewhere in that path. And what I'm hoping to do is bring some clarity to those people. I see Braden and you have chatted in the past. I thought I connected you guys. And so maybe you just need to reconnect on some specifics. But I'll ask the questions that I got earlier. The first one was from Josh Sopko, a friend of mine. And he wants to create a complete analysis of the product idea, market research to estimate potential revenue to show profitability, plan for correct marketing of the product to gain the most income and awareness right away. And he says just the balls to jump off in the deep end with the idea and risk literally everything. And what I translated that as, and there was some more chatter after that, is that he's wanting to know what's the plan to be successful. And right. So you, I'm sure, get this where people come to you and say, can you just give me like the 9 steps to make $1 million with this idea? And how do you deal with that? What's your response to that sort of question like that?
So the simplicity, let me give you the simplicity first, and then all of this. There's like 3 categories and there's subcategories. It's kind of like an outline.
Yeah.
So now, not knowing what this product is, it just depends on the product and the industry it's in.
Yeah, and even I don't know, or I would tell you. So
no, I totally got it and I understand. So it depends on the industry it's in. It depends on what the competitive nature of that product is and what the price points for that product are. And the reason I say that is because you and I were talking earlier, Clint, today, and one of the comments I made following a comment you made about some people you talked to is, you can't force a market. So it doesn't matter what you want to charge for something. It matters what the market will bear. It matters what the consumer is going to pay for this product. So the cost analysis is simply, you're going to need like a 5 times multiplier. So if you have a $20 retail product, you have to have this thing made at $3.50, maybe $4. That's got to be your cost of goods. And that's landed in the United States if it isn't manufactured here. So that's the simple answer to a cost analysis. All right. And that's not my opinion. That's just the way it is. Because if you're going to roll out, whether you build a business yourself or license this thing out, your licensee is going to want to know that they can build it for X and sell it for Y. And in between is your 5% royalty, 3 to 5% royalty, maybe 8% royalty if it's a lockdown, super powerful intellectual property protection in patent or trade secret or whatever it is. All right. So, and then they've got salesmen, right? They've got allowances. If it's a deliverable, if it's a digital deliverable, then that's a different story. But if it's a durable good or some sort of deliverable out of a catalog, or if it's a retail product on the shelf, they've got to give co-op advertising. So all of these cost analysis. Okay, you've got the cost of goods, you've got how the design and the packaging. You've got salesmen. You're going to give somebody a 5% salary, a commission against salary. Or you're going to sell it yourself, or if you're going to license it, of course, like I was mentioning, they're going to want to know that they can make this thing, they can build all the marketing material, they can warehouse this, and they can sell it into Target, to AutoZone, to Petco, wherever it's going. So your job is to do that if you're going to license it, so that when you pitch it, you can give the broad strokes to the potential licensee. They know their markets pretty well. And as far as the potential revenue to show profitability, it depends how many units you're going to sell. You don't always know. So if it's a dog leash, you know that there's 1 million dog leashes out there. If it's a dog leash that feeds your dog, picks up after your dog, and walks it without you, then you know that you've got a specialized item. I read this question as I'm looking at it that says he might be wanting to build a business around this product. And if you're going to do that, I think that's fine, but you're going to be risking a lot of time, money, and look forward to losing some friends and family if you dig for investment money, because statistically it's not going to launch. I'll just be straight. I'll be Clint Brown with you. It's not going to succeed statistically. Having said that, your job is to show enough interest to, start a little cottage industry, make some sales. Your costs are going to be a bit higher because you're going to be doing short runs of this product, whatever it is. And then if you license it and you can show sales, that's when people are going to say, wow, this thing, there's a demand for this in the micro. Let's see if we can expand to the macro. And then when they start bringing in 15, 20, 25,000 units to warehouse every quarter, every 6 months, then they're going to say, wow, this is cool. And then you're going to get your royalty check. Perhaps you can hold back some rights to still sell online, to keep one of the markets you're in because you like that $4,000 or $5,000 a month or every quarter that you're selling to your existing customers. So these are just some of the angles you can take, starting with a new product or idea. But keep in mind, you can't force the market, like I mentioned earlier. And as far as the balls to jump off the deep end, let me tell you, if that's still a question, that should be the first question you answer. Do I have the balls to jump into the deep end without the floaties up here, And typically, I say don't quit your day job while you're developing this product. Yeah. You can't. I mean, I did because the wife was working and, our house was in good shape, and I stopped everything, and I had to. What do they say? And Think and Grow Rich, just burn the ships. And that's what I did. I left myself no fallback position. So I was shameless. I drove 14 hours for a meeting from Pasadena area in California to Broomfield, Colorado, right there between Denver and Boulder. I would drive 14 hours. I mean, what is your commitment level? And for a 15-minute meeting. But I knew when I got there, it would be a 45-minute meeting, with Gaiam, one of the big health and fitness companies out there. And it worked out. They loved my product, and I was a vendor to them.
Yeah. And I think that's interesting that Josh brought that up, because I think when you get down to the heart of it, it's the perception of risk. And some people are very turned on by that, and have not only turned on by, because a lot of people turn on by risks that shouldn't be taking them, but what's the consequence? Like, can you afford to fail at this and it not be detrimental?
So there's an opportunity cost, right? So here's this. So I took a course in entrepreneurship at the University of Maryland, and there are three issues: opportunity discovery. I've got this great idea. Mm-hmm. Opportunity analysis, which is what Josh was talking about, and then opportunity cost. What is this? What's the opportunity cost in time and money? Mm-hmm. So, it's like if you buy a cup of coffee for $5 at Starbucks, that cup of coffee didn't cost you $5, potentially cost you $10 or $15 because of the opportunity cost that lost on something you could have done with that $5 other than buy a cup of coffee. So those three things to keep in mind are really, really important, and continue to juggle and weigh those 3 points, and that'll help you figure out whether you should push through with this or not.
Yeah. Now, what do you think about a lot of advice I give people? And I think the advice I gave him was, if it's digital, put it online. If you can make a widget and try, like, get some market validation before you lose so much sleep as to whether or not your plan's going to work. See if you could sell some of them. I mean, I literally delivered products today to Fargo, North Dakota, to a craft show thing on the sidewalks where they shut down the streets. And there are people selling every kind of wacky thing under the sun out there. Little widgety things that spin, that keeps the kids happy and all sorts of stuff. But you know what? Someone made a couple dozen of them, went to a show, and they're hawking them for $10. And then you go, hey, at least they'll pay $10. At least they'll pay $10 in this environment. You get some sort of sense of what that could be, versus keeping it a secret and hope that when you go, ta-da, the world cashes in on you. That's just so rare that ever happens, if ever.
Right. I know. I think that's smart. So the point is, build a couple of these things and see if you can sell them. I mean, that's really the key. You're right, Clint. That's really the key. Just because for me, I know that, like, I built a spatula I was showing you earlier. Mm-hmm. Prototypes don't have to cost very much to make. So I'll just sit in the shop and I'll make a prototype and I'll see if anybody wants it.
Yeah.
And if somebody wants it, I'll make a few for them. And I'm going to break even, or it'll cost me money. But what I want to know is it delivering the service, or is it delivering the experience that I want delivered? And if it is, it gives me, even if it's a survey of 1 or 2 people, or a survey of 10 people at a farmer's market, I want to know that. Are people willing to pay that money? And you can see that with those little fidget spinners. You can see that with the most ridiculous thing you would think people would pay $10 or $12 for. But why do they do that? Why do they, the lifespan of Pet Rock was only 6 months, but we still talk about the Pet Rock sometimes. Mm-hmm. People bought rocks. Mm-hmm. See if anybody wants it.
Or Chia Pets.
Well, they're still Chia Pets, Rite Aid, CVS, Walgreens. They're always selling
it's a huge product my entire life. There's been Chia Pets out there.
Yes.
Yeah, I think go to market with it and try it out. I mean, I encourage that to my kids. If they want to have a little lawn mowing service, I'm like, knock on doors and see if people will pay you. You want to sell lemonade, get out there and make some and see if people, like, let's not spend time worrying so much about everything. Like, let's see. I met a guy, there's a little town northwest of here, and a farmer, made a contraption that threw a brown bale of hay over the fence out of his trailer. Farmers are pretty pragmatic. They go, I'm sick and tired of doing this. I want to make a thing that goes here in a hydraulic and you push the lever over the fence. And so he makes it. He's happy. Someone says, hey, that's pretty cool. You should show it at the local farm show. So he does it at the local county fair or whatever, and gets so many orders that he has a business day one. But he made a product that clearly solved a need. People were willing to pay the price right then and there. And now he's the biggest employer in town. He owns a huge steel company that makes all kinds of farm implements. But he was bold enough to make one and go to market and say, someone says, what is that? He explained it. They're like, geez, how much is it? $2,500? I'll take 4. You go, oh God, yeah, sure, 4. Let me write down your name and phone number.
Right. So it's funny you say, you solve the problem. So for the note takers out there, and Gene, I see your question, and Braden, we'll jump on those in a second. But what I want to do is just kind of explain for the note takers out there is there's really 4 questions you have to ask before you should pursue an idea. Number 4 is really what you're talking about. Clint, with this guy. Well, actually, 1 in 4.
Yeah.
So, are you solving a problem? Number one.
Mm-hmm.
Are you inventing to a need? Is this thing needed or wanted?
Mm-hmm.
Are you fulfilling a dream? Now, not your dream of financial gain. Let me give you a quick example of what I mean by a dream. A friend of mine years ago, maybe 5-6 years ago, went to Hawaii. I ended up going to Hawaii 4 or 5 times. Problem is, she wanted to visit friends because she used to live there. She taught at Punahou private school and years ago, and she wanted to go visit her friends and some family in Hawaii. And she was afraid to fly. So she asked if I would go with her as her like chaperone. And I said, okay. So I went to Hawaii 4 times that year. I fulfilled a dream for her. I was her person that would allow her to fly. Yeah. Now, I didn't charge her, but she paid for my ticket. She fed me. She gave me, food and drink, and she put me up in a hotel.
Yeah.
So I fulfilled the dream for her to fly to Hawaii to visit friends and family.
Yeah. Good.
I've been for 8 or 10 years. All right. Now, that's a service somebody could build out. Are you afraid to fly? I'll be your chaperone. Right. So that's what I mean by fulfilling a dream, or making or swinging a golf club, and getting an extra 20 yards on your drive. That's fulfilling a dream.
Yeah.
Now, number 4 is the most important thing, whether it's product, service, or business. It's, can you manufacture and sell that thing at a profit? Or can you develop the business or service and deliver that experience at a profit? If you can't answer yes to that, drop it like a hot rock and go on to something else.
Yeah, and I think that's the one people don't want to answer, because the answer is no, which squashes their dreams.
Yep.
And they, I think the hard thing is, once you've done enough of these projects, I think my wife and I'm into like my 27th company now. Once you've done enough of these, you just realize, like, let's see if it works. If it works, let's make money at it. If it gets sold, or you shut it down, or you move on, then you go, that was fun, let's do the next one. And you have to be willing to be iterative. You don't have one idea in your whole life. You got to say, okay, that wasn't a good match. Now, the funny thing is that sometimes your ideas, the right product is just the wrong time. Sometimes it just doesn't make sense yet, but in a few years when people are doing XYZ, then you dust it off the shelf. Disney is famous for this, for inventing ideas and cartoons decades before they were right socially or right for the market, and they dust it off the shelf and go, oh, we should release this now. This idea was perfect. It just, now that the climate's right for that market.
Yeah, I call that being an hour ahead of your time. You always want to be 15 minutes ahead of your time, because if you're an hour ahead of your time, that's gonna gather dust, because nobody's gonna see it. Because as creators and ideators, you got to understand, you are going to be ahead of the curve sometimes when it comes to solving a problem. And sometimes people need to catch up to acknowledging or seeing that they need this problem solved. Mm-hmm. Because essentially you're kind of disrupting patterns when you bring something new onto the, onto the scene. And even if people are so used to, slicing something this way, when really it's more efficient to slice it this way. So there's an education needed sometimes. And again, it's, if you're an hour ahead of your time, it's going to gather dust. I mean, some of the best songs that we've all heard were written 10, 12, 15 years ago, and they only now are hitting the airwaves because they just weren't ready to come out. Yeah.
Very, very interesting. All right. Let's look at the next question, and then we'll jump over into the questions in the chat. Sammy Pitts, also a friend. I don't think either of these characters are on the webinar, so they're just really excited about asking questions, I guess. How do I get my stuff out to the masses and then get them to become a customer? Now, what I did find out is that his masses product is an apparel line. So if that provides you any sort of parameters. So what's your thoughts on that?
Well, we talked earlier, Clint, apparel is tough. Now, so you look at so is it the streetwear apparel line?
Yeah, I think it's some sort of streetwear.
Okay, so I mean, look, clearly, as we discussed earlier, one of the things to do is get somebody who is known on the street. Get them wearing your product. Get pictures of them wearing your product. Get people wearing your stuff. Mm-hmm. Because ultimately, if you want to protect what you have, it's got to be protectable. And what I mean by that is if it's got a cool logo, a logo isn't on a T-shirt isn't necessarily protectable. The Patent and Trademark Office looks at that as more decorative instead of protectable.
Yeah.
Now, if your line, let's just use FUBU, for instance. If your company is called FUBU and the hang tag on that product as FUBU, as the company, and then the logo on your shirt says FUBU, then that's a protectable trademark. Now, I'm not a lawyer, but I went through this with my attorney at lunch or dinner the other night. Yeah. And I asked him, because he was, his firm was the firm that got the protection for Lucky Jeans. Lucky You, when you take the zipper of your pants down, this is Lucky You with a clover leaf right inside the fly. Mm-hmm. That was granted a trademark protection because it was part of the Lucky line of clothing. Yeah. Nobody else can put anything. You can't even put Scott and Clint pants inside the fly. They just can't, because that is a protected thing. But it's yeah. So as far as listen, if you can use this streetwear, you get guys like Sean White, get some of these people to wear your clothing. I mean, he has his own clothing line. Yeah. You get the picture. Find some up and comers that will wear this. You just got to that's the way to do it. I mean, I've got a friend in Orange County. She created a non-slip two-piece bikini, and it took her forever to get some beach volleyball gals to wear. But once she did, then she was able to license some of those products to Oakley or some other women's, bathing suit line. But she had to show that it was interesting, showed that there was a demand for it, showed that there are celebrities in that industry or the category of celebrity wearing that product. I mean, that's really the way to do it, because ultimately, what do you want to do? You want to get that thing in front of as many eyes as possible. And if you don't have the context, you need to be able to demonstrate that this thing is needed and wanted, or people are following, Joe Blow on a skateboard or a bicycle, and he's wearing these clothes, and now they want to wear his clothes.
Yeah, and I think this is why you hear Gary Vee and others talk about the power of people that are like Instagram influencers, especially those that have buyers or customers that follow them. And, celebrity endorsements, product placement, all those things have been around for a very long time. And they do it because it works. It's a center of influence. There's some trust that is transferred very quickly. And they say, well, if they're doing it and I did it, I'll be safe or cool like them or whatever. Uh-huh. But it's a tough grind. I think that people think that there's, I had a customer, maybe he'll be watching this, so I'm going to pick on him a little bit, but he one time asked me he was uploading a YouTube video. He asked me, where's the viral button? Very sincerely.
Wow.
And I said, buddy, if there was a viral button, don't you think everybody would be uploading anything and pushing it? Though YouTube, maybe if YouTube put it and had, $1 million, people would pay $1 million and hit the viral button. I don't know. It's a misunderstanding of how things get seen and how difficult that is and how much exposure it takes to get a buyer, to get a new sale.
Right. And so, think about it this way, right? You think about a guy like some ridiculous name like Tiger Woods. That guy has made more money and endorsements than he has played in golf. Oh, yeah. You look at the endorsement deals that professional athletes get, wearing Nike, wearing Adidas, wearing Puma. And there's a reason why those companies spend that kind of money. There's a reason why Nike created the Air Jordan brand for Michael Jordan. Because that's a brand unto itself under the Nike banner, right? Mm-hmm. So, but and that's $1 billion brand or whatever. It's huge. Yeah. But the reason why it is because that guy did what so few people can do. Mm-hmm. Had people tune in to watch him because he controlled the eyeballs of millions of people. Mm-hmm. And I want to be like Mike, right? Mm-hmm. I want to go spend $200 in those shoes. I go down to South Central LA and I talk to some last chance schools, and I find the person with the most expensive pair of shoes in the classroom, and this is South Central LA, Slauson and Crenshaw, for those of you who know where that is, and last chance schools. And these guys and gals have $200, $250 pair of shoes on. So I have them take one of those shoes off, and I have them put it on the desk, and I say, listen, I know why you bought that, But what could you have done with that $250 that would advance your cause? But people don't think about that when they're buying.
Yeah.
Because the impressions are huge. How can you make an impression? How can you make a difference in as many people's lives as possible? Because that's what's going to determine how much money you make from this idea. That's what's going to do it. And that's why these people have these huge brands that are making all this money on endorsement deals.
Yeah, they have a huge impact.
Yep.
Okay, well, let's jump back over. Scott, we're trucking along here. Let's go back and answer Braden's question. What if his volume is low? I think there's very few. He has a small group of people on the planet who need a very expensive piece of machinery that he's improved upon. So does he seek higher royalties? What do you do with a low volume invention who you probably need to license out for manufacturing reasons?
Well, if you're going to license it out, whoever you license it to is going to manufacture it.
Yeah.
So, if it's if it's low volume, low demand, but it's just a low demand market, then whether you get a higher royalty or not, you may be able to negotiate a higher royalty. But if you're getting 5% of $10, that's 50 cents. If you're getting 5% of $100, that's $5. So clearly that 5% gets larger as I'm assuming it's a high dollar product. But the royalty, although they're negotiable, the royalty it's just set. It just happens to be you're going to get between 3 and 5% of the wholesale, and that's just the way it is. Unless, like I said, unless you put the time and money into protecting it and have an ironclad intellectual property protection, then you can go maybe 8-10%, something like that. And if it's a super specialized product that the potential licensees knows to be able to keep everybody out of the market for many years, they may be willing to give you more money, if not in advance. They'll give you more money in a royalty, only if they know that they can protect this thing and nobody's going to come in and compete with them. Because it all comes down to how soon is somebody going to and jump into the market and bring your sales down.
And what if it's something that, and I could be wrong, but I don't remember how consumable, and Braden, maybe you can answer this. I don't remember it being that consumable. If you invent something that is a $100,000 or $10 million piece of machinery that goes in a science lab, and every 8 years they have to replace it, there's not much product churn there. Do you just sell the idea to a company and say, I'll take my money and walk? Because otherwise you're never going to get any royalties.
Right. So good point. And yeah, that's what you do. So for instance, give you an example. JPL, Jet Propulsion Laboratory, right here about 5 minutes from my house in Pasadena, right near the Rose Bowl. They got people and scientists working there. And these guys are developing crazy intellectual property. And the guys and gals that develop this, let's go out to outer space, the design and develop the Mars rover. Mm-hmm. They might they don't own that intellectual property, any component that they develop. They just get their salary, and they might get an honoraria of, say, $500 for having developed this thing. And they get no royalty. If you sell a big piece of heavy equipment, you're selling a big piece of heavy equipment. There are no royalties on it. You may want to build a business around maintaining that thing so you can get service contracts. I mean, there's points of value you can benefit from. So if it's a big piece of equipment, like you say, and if it's not going to be replaced for 8 or 10 years, it's still going to need seals replaced. It's going to need servicing, maintenance. So if you can build a side business around that and make that part of selling the product to them, or selling them the right to manufacture that product, and perhaps sell it to other people in that industry, you keep those maintenance contracts. It's just where the points of value, and where you can scrape and rake money from having sold one thing there's no big turnover in.
But as a young scientist, I mean, would he just, depending on what the situation, as a young scientist and has an idea for solving these sort of very complicated scientific engineering problems, he's writing comments now. One of the advantages is mechanical simplicity and less maintenance. I mean, that's the part of his genius is he's made a product that lasts longer and works better. I mean, he's a young guy too, real young PhD. You just say, here, big company, write me a check. It's your deal. You've got a manufacturer deal. Then I'm going to take that money and go develop my next idea and just keep cranking.
That's what I would do. I mean, I would go. I mean, see, I'm one of those guys that just meets people and knows people and just builds and keeps relationships.
Yeah.
I would go right over and talk to my buddy Michael Gunson at JPL, the leader scientist that put 2 years ago put up the OCO, the Orbiting Carbon Observatory, to check out CO2 emissions and all this stuff. Launched from Vandenberg in Central California, this satellite. He's the lead scientist on that, and I can call him and say, hey, Michael, I got this great idea. So Braden, one of the things you have to understand is find people in that specialized industry, because if you're solving a problem for them, they're going to want, they want that, they need it, and if you're in that field, I mean, there are, like, for instance, there are companies, manufacturers and distributors that only take submissions, product submissions and ideas from the field. In other words, from people out there working in the field, whether it's plumbers, air conditioning guys, electricians, because they're solving problems and making systems, more easily confrontable and delivered. They want to know that this is the proof of concept is there and tested already. So if you can do that, all you need to do is find somebody in the category of business or the industry. I say all you need to do, make it sound so simple. It's not simple, but find somebody that would be interested in this and be a welcoming pest. And if there's an art to not pissing people off when it comes to leaving messages and emails when they don't get right back to you. But there's an art to that, and I can help you with that. But the point is, just find the person you want to present to, call them, email them, and say, hey, listen, I'd like 10 minutes to show you what I have. I'm going to solve your problem, fit into your product line, research your company, and I can make things very easy, low maintenance, yada, yada, yada. And that's the simplicity of getting in the door. Now you have to deliver. Now, do you have a 3D model of this? Do you have a working model of this? Do you have a, what are you going to present? Because the 3 steps of like bringing something to the market and getting an idea of what you have, building an embodiment, a model, a working prototype, something like that, and then delivering it to the end user, which is essentially the consumer or the person that's going to use this piece of heavy equipment, to excavate property or whatever.
Yep. All right, perfect. Let's go answer Jean's question. Jean has sort of a makerspace in Sioux Falls. She really wants to be able to guide. So she's a service provider to idea people, creators. Really want to be able to guide them on this with coaching, mentoring, training to help them market their items. What's the best avenue? What are your thoughts there?
So I hope to have inventors. Okay. What's funny? I don't know if you're doing some of this now, Gene, but I use the word embodiment a lot because imagine this. Imagine you're giving health and wellness advice and you're a chiropractor or an alternative medicine practitioner. And imagine at first sight, you're not the embodiment of the thing you're selling. You're not healthy and well, or you don't appear to be. Like, for instance, Dr. Weil, whatever his name is.
Mm-hmm.
Now, I see his picture on books. I don't know the guy, never met him. I just see his picture on books, and he's a health and wellness guy. He just doesn't look like, I wouldn't want to look like him. I hate that, just the way it is. I got a buddy who's a chiropractor here locally, and a very good friend of mine. We watch pay-per-view fights together all the time, but he is not the embodiment of the thing he's selling. So I guess, Gene, what I'm getting at is, if you're going to mentor people, you either need, whether it's certification or a huge background in research where you are the go-to person, or say, hey, listen, here are the things I've done using the systems I want to mentor and train you with. And they're going to go, oh, really? Wow. I want to hear, I want to listen. Clint, you had 27 companies. People want to know how you were able to monetize those things.
Mm-hmm.
I mean, I've launched a lot of products. People want to know, how did I do that? Well, I can show you everything. I go to my closet here, go to my shop. I've got all these 3D printing things. I've had products in The Biggest Loser, fitness products. And so I'm able to do that. So, Gene, if you want to do that, make sure that you've got a system they can follow. Okay, so I want to guide them to this coaching, mentoring, training to make help them market their product. So what system do you have? What pattern do you have to give them or to train them or mentor them when they call on a prospective licensee or a manufacturer or distributor or an independent salesperson if they're going to manufacture short runs of this product? So you have to be able to deliver those, like contacts, resources. So what resources?
She just left a comment there saying she doesn't want to coach him. She just wants to be able to be the connector. And in which case,
forward them on, and we'll organize a some sort of a fee schedule. Absolutely, no, that's fine. I mean, that's a big part of what I do right now. I get referrals from intellectual property firms, and it works out pretty well. And I offer 3D printing services at a very reasonable price, a la carte kind of offerings. So yeah, absolutely.
And I think where Gene, you could do is continue to build out your resource network so people come to you and you could say, really, whatever problem you're facing, I've got somebody in my Rolodex or cell phone or however you explain it that specializes in this. It could be that you make your money off of being the connector on the front side by providing space in classes like you do, and or some sort of kickback relationship when you pass those services on to other providers. Some of those companies have fee structures built in that allow for that. But I think that in my experience of being somewhat similar, Gene, in nature, is that you've really got to connect the dots for people. Like, if you come to me, I can get you on the phone with Scott, and Scott will solve this problem for you and make that path illuminated. Not come to me, I know cool people, and I'll figure out which of my cool people are good for you. People are just hesitant because they don't know, they either don't know where they're going or they don't think that you're the one that's going to get them where they do want to go. And so it's got to lower that barrier to risk. I think when I find, referring people on, I think though a challenge, Gene, is so many idea people and so many makers and so many inventors don't have any sort of realism associated with what actually it takes to make money from their idea. They're in la la land, and they think that because they have an idea, they're special, or they think that ideas are special and they're not. And so then they live in this little fantasy world that if I just do the right thing, I want to make $1 million from this thing that I've come up with. And, I guess some cultural things there of people just not understanding how it works. It's similar to people who are great artists. They're often prolific. Poets who were successful wrote tons of poetry. When Prince died recently, where they find another 18 unreleased albums, the guy was prolific, just profuse amount of songwriting and recording. And obviously didn't write one song and say, I hope this is my retirement gig. I mean, it just was obsessive at doing it. And so I think
on that point of $1 million ideas, now you may have $1 million idea. And Gene, one of the things that you can really separate the wheat from the chaff, if you will, on potential clients and people you're going to refer out is, the only thing that makes an idea special is that it's yours, because they're a dime a dozen, right? So the idea is, if you have $1 million idea, it may sell $1 million at retail, but who's going to get that $1 million? You're going to get, the inventor is going to get a royalty, and they're not going to get $1 million. I mean, there may be $1 million product, but who's going to get that money? One. And two, when you license something out, people need to know this, and the expectations have to be handled. So this may help you a little bit, Gina, is that, your first royalty check after you license something might not come for 18 to 24 months because of all the interstitial sort of activities that need to happen to bring that product to market. And then if it doesn't sell, you don't get paid anyway. So just the way it is. And but I just grabbed this because I have a client who came up with this great idea, and it's actually patented. And he came to me because his attorney is a friend of mine. And the easiest part of the process of inventing is patenting something, if it's patentable, because all you have to do is find an IP attorney of your liking and write him a check and then wait. The hard part is getting it to market, right? So We all have seen these earbuds. They come with all the phones. And what do? They get tangled, right? And they're difficult to manage. So we'll call the guy Chris, comes up with this product, right? It's just a little winder. Now, believe it or not, this has a utility patent on it. Okay, it's just a little winder, fits in your pocket. And the winder, I'm showing you this just because stuff's happening in real time, right? So we stick earbud through here, and then like a fly fishing reel, we just start spinning this. And it winds the earbuds up, and you can store it nice and comfortably, right? And I'm having and this is solved a big problem, and I'm having a really hard time getting this thing licensed. I got a few bites, and it's going to be a 2-minute commercial. So there you go. So now it's all together, right? And it's manageable. It's like a hose reel.
Yeah.
But the point is, something as simple as this has a utility patent because of the way it winds up. And my 3D printer buddy printed these out, and I'm trying to license this. And it's really difficult because what's the compelling reason? Now people have Bluetooth, but still some people use the earbuds because Bluetooth batteries die. And they lose, and they lose connectivity. So it's still a problem that now has a solution. And the hardest part is getting these things to market. So yeah, Gene, I mean, feel free to refer people to Clint, to me, and if I can't handle something, I got plenty of contacts and resources to send you in the right direction, because this is the hardest part, is bringing something to market.
Absolutely. Braden had 2 follow-ups. If you scroll up a little bit in your chat above Gene's, you'll say he's struggling with the whole, quote, just make some to sell and see what happens stage. I think because he doesn't have the facilities to manufacture them. It would take some specialized equipment, if I'm not mistaken. And he's gotten some manufacturers to buy and test the systems, but they want to see tests on more materials. So the market is responding and saying, it looks good for this situation. Will it solve these other problems, if I'm reading it correctly? And then he just typed at the bottom, can you speak more to soliciting manufacturers to license too? So what do you do when you're in that stage? Like, he's scientifically solved the problem. It probably requires some sort of expensive facility to manufacture a specialized electromagnetic or film or whatever it is. You can't do it in his garage safely. So what do you do when you're that?
So this is where things can get a little expensive, unless you can get a manufacturer to put up some of their resources. Material isn't very expensive, regardless of what the material is. That's a market that's pretty flattened out, leveled out all around the world. China did, they created that even market and material cost years ago when they started buying up all raw materials. So it comes down to a compelling argument to have a manufacturer build 1 or 2 different variations. And it's going to cost you some money. I don't know how involved or how big or how small this thing is. There's a robotic tank cleaner for water treatment and oil for barges. I don't know what this thing is, but if a manufacturer if they're manufacturing for this industry already, and they know that if they can make this thing work, they can sell it to their existing base of clients, then it would be an easy sell. I mean, it seems to me, find a manufacturer who is delivering similar or like products, or the distributors. The other thing is, find a distributor who's distributing for manufacturers. They say, wow, we need to distribute stuff, right? Because they get the 20 or 30% of anything to distribute from the manufacturer. So you might look at distributors for this kind of product. And so I don't know, again, how big or small this product is, but if the manufacturers have a distributor, they go to the distributor, because everything depends on distribution. If the manufacturers are the distributors as well as the manufacturers, then your compelling reason is this is a needed and wanted, and it solves a big problem, or it's an improvement on something you're already manufacturing. But I mean, that's just some marketplace in large cities may co-op with folks to get it. San Francisco, Boston, Dallas have one. Just a thought. Well,
you're switching gears though. That was Gene commenting. Braden's the comment above.
Oh,
Braden's
Braden.
the comment above. I'm at the right stage, but haven't been able to get the manufacturers to build or test yet.
All right. Well, what industry is this? You don't have to spill the beans, but what industry is this, Braden? It would help a little bit.
Let's see. He's writing down below. Okay. Who uses that? Braden, help all of us who aren't as specialized as you. That's not a Hoover vacuum. What industry ends up having this equipment in their facility? Is this like medical? Is this aerospace? Metal industry, people who pour metals or make metal? Okay, there we go. Flat panel displays and touchscreen OEMs.
Okay.
Solid state batteries. So this sort of high-end electronic stuff.
Cool. Got it. Okay. Well, find out who's building the flat panels for TVs. Find out, original equipment manufacturers. Who are they? I would go online right now if there was time, and I would find out who the OEM manufacturers are. The OEMs are for these. They're all over the country, and I bet there's some in the Midwest or on the East Coast, New Jersey in particular. And I would just find out, and I would call them and say I have a product that will is it compliant with any regulation? If you can find compliance and it meets some compliance requirements, that would help too. Well, get a meeting with them. I mean, I'll help you with that. We can talk confidentially, and I'll because
what I think from knowing Braden, and Braden, if I'm saying anything out of turn here, you can correct me. But Braden has spent his adult life in a lab. I mean, he's a super brain when it comes to this sort of stuff, and has been hunkered down developing this stuff in his PhD program. And there's this whole other skill set of marketing and sales and doing the phone calls and doing the dance to go. And he has a PhD over here, and then he's at the beginner stage over here. Do people in this situation when they go, man, I've devoted all my time and expertise to coming up with a solution, but I don't know how to bridge that gap of relationships? Because when a scientist calls a manufacturer, in my opinion, the person who's answering the phone isn't the scientist on the other end who's working the machine. It's somebody in the office who makes those purchasing decisions, who's going to speak a different language than the scientist is going to speak. And having it go through that chain of communication and people make decisions seems like it'd be difficult.
Right. Okay. So this is the simplicity, and it takes a little work, but here's the simplicity, right? I'm not a reductionist, but the simplicity is call these companies and you ask for the new product or product development or research and development office. Who runs that department? And then that's where you're going to get a hold of that person that speaks your language, because the nomenclature is different from department to department to department. So, for instance, if you go to the CEO, he may say, we don't need something like that. But the CEO doesn't make these decisions. The head of that department makes those decisions. So it's really important to know who to talk to. Mm-hmm. So call and ask for, and there are these people, they're all available on Google. Mm-hmm. Call and ask for new product department, new product development, research and development. Or if that doesn't communicate to the gatekeeper or the receptionist, say, I'm a PhD from XYZ University, and I want to submit a white paper and a product, for your consideration. And they'll give you the right office, the right department, and leave a compelling message if they don't answer, or an email, and they will get back to you. Believe me. People don't think so. They will get back to you. Mm-hmm. And get a meeting. Take this thing in. Show them a rendering.
Mm-hmm. Especially if it makes if they're a higher up, their job is to reduce costs. They're on a tight budget to execute, and if his product reduces their production costs or speeds up their time, their outputs, they're able to go to their boss with their quarterly report and say things are 10% better, or 2% better, or whatever they're trying to hit.
If they can get more cycles out of a machine with your product, in other words, if they're getting 100 cycles of activity out of their machine now, and they can get 1,000 cycles out of that machine, then you're creating a whole new ball game for them where they can just, their bottom line increases. So look at it from those angles. What problems are you solving? Are they going to get more cycles out of an activity, out of a machine? Are they going to have to clean it once a month instead of once a day, depending on what this vacuum thing does? So in all of those things, though, I understand from the PhD mindset, it's like, I'm not a salesperson, but you know better than anybody what problem this solves or how this increases their bottom line. And that's ultimately what the product development, the R&D department at this company or these companies are looking for, because they're constantly doing this. And with your PhD, whether they take outside submissions or not, routinely, they're going to consider you. Because one of the things to consider as well is sometimes companies don't take outside submissions. They just take submissions and development from within. But you're going to have to flex your muscles as a PhD and submit the white paper and whatever guidelines their submissions require. But just jump through those hoops, and there's no magic to it. You got to jump through those hoops. But if you're personable and you can speak their language, they're going to say, yeah, come on in for a meeting. And if you're not in the area, Braden, just tell them, yeah, I'm going to be there in about 10 days, and just make sure you're there in 10 days. And that's part of the game too. Hey, I'm going to be in Boulder, Colorado, visiting my cousin from years ago. I'm going to be 10 minutes from you, and they'll say, oh, okay, come on in. And then whether you're going to be there or not, you just show up. Sometimes you have to play that game.
Yeah. Jeremy's asking, is there any place in or near Sioux Falls that can make mold polyplastic? Someone else is going to have to answer that question because Scott's out in California.
Yeah, but if it's a product that is within an 8 inch by 8 inch envelope, our 3D printers can print something out.
Yeah, Falcon Plastics and Brookings. There are people that do it. Depends on if it has to be extruded or printed or what you want there.
Right.
Jeremy, I'm not sure what that's for. If you're just looking for a prototype, 3D printing might be the way to go if you're needing to actually produce. Shane is also in this, and Shane and Scott know each other. Shane was in this chat. He still is in here, and he might have some context too, depending on what that is. It's about a 3 foot by 2 foot prototype. Maybe they have to build it in pieces, Scott? Yeah,
so I have a couple of products I printed out recently, the samples of prototypes I had built just for the cool thing is, it's when it's designed and then they create the STL file, stereolithography file out of SolidWorks, which is the program to feed the printer. It's broken down into component parts, and it's like a puzzle. You just put it together, glue it together, because typically it's ABS material similar to the stuff in your weed whacker. The spool of this stuff just gets fed into the printer and
printed out there. So,
yeah.
Let's you guys can ask us some more questions on the side. Let's do one of two things. I either want you to show them the spatula and talk them through how in the world that came to be, or you said at the beginning there's 3 things to consider, 3 steps. So you want to tackle the steps, or do you want to tackle the spatula?
Well, let me just show you quickly the spatula so you can see. And I can show you in my closet over here many other things, but it's something very simple like a spatula. I mean, we've all got spatulas and utensils, so who needs a new spatula? Well, interesting you ask that.
Thanks for asking.
Yes. So I golf recreationally, and I've got an offset putter. So I decided I wanted to be able to scoop food 360 degrees, or at least 270 degrees, on the front, the back, and the side, or perhaps both sides of the spatula. But right now you can't do that. Really, it's just a front feed for the spatula. So what I did was I built a prototype, which is an offset spatula.
Mm-hmm.
So I can scoop things from the back, I can scoop things from the side, or of course, go in front load.
Yeah.
So I built it out of this is balsa wood, and this is 1/8" metal from Home Depot, and and this is foam, just foam handle like for a handlebar, and then this is just some gray plastic conduit, electrical conduit, and then a little wooden ball with some JB Weld epoxy just for a design element. Anyway, it's just a prototype. It cost me maybe $3 or $4 and 3 or 4 hours to make this. I didn't need a huge investment. But I wanted to say, if I just sketched this out, could I give it to my 3D printer? Could he design it? Could he kick out a STL file? And could he print that spatula? So in less than an hour, we sat at a pub local to where I live, and he got his laptop out, and he built the model. Looking at this, taking the measurements, I already have a prototype, so it's not like I needed one, but I wanted to see how this would work to print this. So 2 days later, he brings me this 3D printed spatula. See, pretty cool. And right here, because it's longer than 8 inches, he had to make this handle in 2 pieces. So this is a female and this is a male, and just receives it nicely. You just glue it together. And I can paint this. It's ABS plastic. I can paint it if I wanted to. But what it does is it gives you a representation, the real deal. So when you go in, it doesn't leave anything to the imagination. One of the things you have to realize and understand is whether it's 3D printed, whether it's just a 3D rendering, you want to leave as little to the imagination as possible, because, so thinking about it, Braden, if you just tell somebody what you have, that's one thing, but you're leaving a lot to the imagination. If you can show them, or if you can have a 3D rendering of this thing working and it communicates clearly to them, then they're going to say, oh, this is pretty cool. When can you give us a working model so we can test this? Because in theory, it's pretty cool. Then you say, oh, wow, this is interesting. So now you have an interest item, and they may say, hey, bring one in. Let's test this. And why I say that is I have a biofeedback back pad. I went to my chiropractor friend and I said, hey, listen, will you endorse this? And I'll pay you 10% of all my sales. And if you slouch, the thing beeps, so now you're going to sit up. He says, well, let's do this. I've got 20 seats in the reception area. Give me 10 of them. I'll put one on 10 seats, right? And then we'll get feedback from people sitting there while they're waiting for us. And I said, oh, cool. What a testing ground. Perfect. Now, he's a friend of mine, but anybody would say, okay, if they get a free sample, and he's going to endorse it. So if you can show something to someone and give them a real life demonstration, they're more amenable to giving it consideration and taking it to the next step, taking it to the marketing department, or bringing the marketing department person in to the meeting. So because they're got to start thinking, because R&D isn't in marketing. Marketing has to see how they're going to, market this thing. Should they license it or buy this thing from you? So this is why it's important to have, an actual physical manifestation of this thing in the physical universe to hand to them. So again, you leave nothing to the imagination.
Where are you headed with that product? So you've got your prototype, you got your 3D printed, and then what are you doing?
So what I'm going to do with this is, my idea was to have this, have a little collar here where this comes out, a spoon goes on, a whisk goes on, and this will sit in a rack, and you just have, it's going to be a novelty item, right? Yeah. So instead of having, a stainless steel container like we have on the counter next to the stove or the range, with all these utensils in, you'll have one utensil, you push a button, this slides out, and then your ladle or your whisk or your spoon slides on. So you have one handle. It's like the razor and the razor blade, yeah? Yep. So that's where I'm going with this, coupled with a set of 2 specialty knives, one of which I licensed to Ron Popeil years ago when he had his specialty knife set. It's a slicing knife that nothing stuck to. So there's a second knife to that set that he didn't take that I'm going to release with this spatula set.
Awesome. And then where are you just going to go to your contacts, or are you going to try to license it out, or what are you going to try to do?
I'm going to license it to OXO. There's a couple other companies that I'm looking at. So but yeah, I'm just going to go and I built relationships with these people with products they took and products they didn't take. And even with the people that didn't take a product, as long as you keep emailing them and say, Merry Christmas, Happy Birthday, or whatever it is, you just stay in their tickler file. In their mind, the phonographic loop will, it starts extending beyond 15 minutes, 15 seconds, 20 minutes a day, a week, a month, a year. So when you call or your email comes across, you reference the last time you talked to them, and they're going to go, oh, cool, I get it. Because not many people are calling on these manufacturers or distributors. They're just not, because they think it's difficult. Nobody wants to talk to them,
Yeah.
And nobody has the guts to make a call and say, I've got a product I want to present to you. Mm-hmm. And nobody like you can present your product. That's why I get excited about presenting stuff. That's why I get excited about, going into Starbucks and say, hey, listen, you play my song, but we got a playlist. I said, yeah, but come on, I'm a regular customer. Throw this in your lineup. So they play my songs at Starbucks locally. For me, I get to brag about that. But the point is, with this, I just call OXO or a couple other kitchen gadget companies, Calphalon, and Farberware. Mm-hmm. And I've got relationships with a lot of these people. And as the people, my contacts, as my contacts leave, I'm always enough in touch with them where I am introduced to the people replacing those contacts. Yeah. So I keep that mill running very smoothly.
Perfect. Well, there's some chatter going in on the side about 3D printing options, local, remote, whatever. Can we dive into, I want to be respectful of your time, Scott, and the people who jumped in on this. At the beginning, you mentioned a couple of steps. I don't know if you're willing to share some of those steps. And then two more things I'd like to do. I'd like to let them know how, after you share those steps, if you're so willing, let them know how they can participate with you online or whatever stuff you got going on. And then for those of you who are watching, I would love for you to think now of what your takeaway is from this, and I'll explain that a little bit more. But we're going to turn the tables here. I might even open the mics up and let you guys chat directly with Scott here at the end. But Scott, what were those 3 steps you were teasing us about?
Okay, so a couple of things. I'll run through these for the note takers again. And it's all this stuff is chronicled in my book, Invent That Now. I'm not doing this to sell the book. I'm just letting you know that it's available on Amazon.com. What's funny is when I say that when I'm talking to prisoners, I always get 4 or 5 new orders, which is interesting because these guys have their family order off of Amazon and ship into their.
That's fun.
Yeah, it's kind of cool, So okay, so very, very, very clearly for the note takers, here's what I do. Let me just tell you first what I do when I get an idea. I'll read it right out of this book here. So I get the idea. We all get ideas different ways. They fall into our lap. We solve a problem. We see we can improve something that exists already. So however it just drops into your lap, they hit you like a ton of bricks in the shower. Whatever it is, you get an idea. Then I build a prototype or I have it made. Typically, I build my prototypes because they're durable goods, backpacks, they're push-up products, they're kitchen gadgets. I can make that stuff out of wood, out of metal, bamboo, plastic, 3D printing, whatever. So I make a model or have it made. I use the prototype and I watch other people use the prototype. And look at the ease of use. Is my prototype taking a process that would take 10 steps? Does it shrink it down to 4 or 5 steps? Or when I'm watching someone use it, can I see how I can tweak and fine tune this to make an activity more enjoyable or less cumbersome? And then I just tweak as needed and finally get a working prototype. And while I'm doing that, I'm looking for the 3 to 5 companies that I can take and present this to that can take this thing to market. So if I have a plumbing product, I call plumbing distributors. And when the market was way down 5 years ago, when retail was 5-6 years ago was way down, I solved the problem rebuilding this Craftsman house on a hill above the Rose Bowl in Pasadena. And I said, hey, listen, I just solved this major problem with plumbing fixtures. And I said, who am I going to take this to? And I said, well, where are we buying all our fixtures now? Oh, Hubbard Industries, Oceanside, California, because we have all their flyers in their catalogs. So I called them, Chip and forget the other guy's name, Todd or whatever. I called them and I went down. It's a 2.5 hour drive from my house. I presented this product and they said, do you want to license this or sell it outright? Because we like just to buy stuff and not sell license stuff because we don't want you calling us every quarter and wondering where your check is. I says, sure, I'll sell it to you. So I sold it to them. And I says, let me ask you a question. The market sucks right now. Retail is down. Why are you interested in taking on new products? So keep this in mind. There's never a time distributors or vendors don't want your product. When the economy is down, they want more market share. They want to occupy more shelf space. Just keep that in mind. They want to occupy more shelf space. So they are the go-to vendor for Lowe's, for Home Depot, and so on. Something to keep in mind. I only know that because I asked these guys, why are you giving me all this money for this dopey little product? Well, we need more product to put on the shelf, Scott. I said, okay. All right, so then the other thing you want to realize is what business are you in? Are you manufacturing? Are you licensing? Is it a hybrid? Are you going to be a vendor? If you're going to build a business around this thing, it's high risk, high reward. I get that. But statistically, again, you have to look at where you want it, where your efforts are best placed, and your mental and emotional energy are best placed. So, and then what goal are you pursuing? So this is an important model. What business am I in? What goal am I pursuing? And who's in the business of doing what I need done? So if you look at that, those 3 steps, what business am I in? What goal am I pursuing? Who's in the business of doing what I need done? The key is to find someone with the same goal, so those match up, right? Who's in the business of doing what I need done? It's, say, a manufacturer or a distributor. They don't come up with ideas. They don't invent or ideate. So you're in the business of doing what they need done. You're the idea guy. You're bringing products to them to manufacture. So that's something to keep in mind. Who's in the business of doing what you need done, which is typically manufacturing or distribution or warehousing or sales. Just find out what you don't do and find someone that does that. So as far as the 3-step process to getting a product to market is getting the idea, is what you're referring to, I think, Clint. Getting the idea, building an embodiment or a model, working prototype.
Yeah.
And then what I call getting it to full functioning implementation or in use as intended. Now, each one of those steps has sub-steps, kind of like an outline.
Yeah.
Subject, think, right?
Yeah.
So building the model, there may be 4 or 5 steps to that. You may need to gather, stuff from different areas, or you can just build a model in your shop or have somebody build it at an art school or somebody take it on as a project. And then end use is intended and they hand it to the consumer. So how are you going to do that? Are you going to be, are you going to go on Etsy or eBay or an Amazon store? How are you going to get this thing into the hands of the consumer? So those are the 3 steps and to the marketplace. The other thing to keep in mind is how do you know who your customer is? Your customer is who you sell your product to. So if you're building a product, you're always keeping the end user in mind, obviously. But your customer isn't necessarily the end user if you're going to license this product. Your customer is who you're licensing your product to because your customer is who you're selling this thing to. So my customer, if I have a fitness product and I'm licensing it to Everlast or to Gaiam or to Spry Fitness, they're my customer. The end user is not my customer. The end user is their customer. So that's not slicing and dicing very thinly. That's just the brass tacks, and that's the truth. That will help you understand how you develop and to what degree you polish this product and how, because, it doesn't need to be super duper polished if you're going to go license it. You just need to be able to, present this, leaving nothing to the imagination. And if it's a fitness product, is there a program that drives this product? So the push-up product is interesting, but until I put a program together for that, nobody was interested. You want to do this way, wide, close. There was a whole routine and program how to use this product.
Yeah.
Then it's like people want to know, how do I know if my idea is any good? All right. So I'm going to tell you how to find out whether or not your idea is any good. Excuse me, I didn't have these.
No, I just sprung this on you.
No, that's fine. That's fine. How do I know? Hold on a second. Oh, here we are. Cool. All right, here you go. Okay. There's 6 easy steps. I'll go through them slowly, but quickly. 1, does the model or prototype work? Does it work? Number 2, can you easily explain what it is and what it does? That's probably the biggest problem. Now, I know in the chat room over here, it's difficult to like really clearly lay out what something does. So I'm not referring to that. I'm referring to, if I'm going to sit here and tell you what the spatula does, now it's going to at least receive, or I can collect food at least 270 degrees, front, side, and back, right? And why is that important? Well, because if you're on the grill and the hot dogs push this way or the burgers push this way, you got to be able to find the right angle to pick something up, right? Mm-hmm. Can another person understand it and use it? Can you hand it to somebody and can they use it? Not just the person you're pitching it to, but a friend or a family member. If they pick this up, can they use it? That's simple. Can you identify distribution channels for it? So for the spatula, I can, but can you identify distribution channels? Can you piggyback distribution channels? So for instance, I'll give you an example with Pass It On, the movie. It was a DVD. So not all distributors, manufacturers were distributing motivational, inspirational DVDs. They just weren't doing that. Better Life Media out of somewhere in the Midwest was doing that, and they had just got purchased by the company that manufactured our DVDs. So we piggybacked on their distribution into retail bookstores and DVD stores and online. Yeah. So can you identify distribution channels for this product? Now, can you get a meeting to present the thing, whether to a potential licensee or investors? Can you get the meeting? Angel investors invest their own money and have a stake. They're a stakeholder in your company or in that product. And they look at Shark Tank. It's a reality show and it's largely scripted, but they're not going to invest in anything unless it's spectacular, unless you can show you're making sales. Is this thing needed or wanted in the marketplace? Have you penetrated any markets with this before? Because they're investing their money in this and they're going to have a piece of this company, right? So, and finally, when offered for sale, will the consumer purchase it? That's really the final, that's the 6th step on whether your product's any good or not. And the problem is, the reason I line these 6 points out is because we tend to have an emotional attachment to our latest and greatest product, our idea. Mm-hmm. You got to just be objective, be enthusiastic about it, because you have to be in order to sell the thing or sell the idea to someone or sell the idea to get a meeting. You got to be enthusiastic, but you also have to know, scale things back a little bit, because if it doesn't go, you've got a million other ideas that you can develop. All right. So that's how you know whether your product is any good or not.
Awesome. Well, let's do this, Scott. I'm gonna for those of you who are still in the chat and you guys have hung with us and been so gracious through this. I was telling Scott earlier that I have an uncle who passed away many years ago. His name was Bill, and his actual name was Guillermo, because he's from Hermosillo, Sonora, Mexico, but we called him Bill, which is Guillermo is our William, and William people are called Bill, so that's why we called him Bill. And he was a PhD in geologist for a mining company, and when he was young, he got into the gold mining world as a geologist and found a gold nugget. And he carried that gold nugget with him, as far as I know, the rest of his life. And when I met him in the 80s, he had this gold nugget about the size of a golf ball, a piece of raw gold. I don't know what that's worth or why you carry one around, but it meant something to him. And he carried it because he said, this reminds me each time I go out, the excitement, what I found, what, reminded me of that moment. And so I'm curious, for those of you who've been watching, has there been any golden nuggets for you? If you've got to go home and explain this to your partner, your spouse, a business partner, your parents, your friend in the other room who you've told that they need to wait until you're off this, your kids, is there anything that's popped out in this to help Scott and I understand sort of what's sinking in? We'd love for you to leave it in the chat. If you could just type up if anything has popped out at you, and leave it in the chat. We'll give you a few minutes if something's popped up. And I'll start it off so people got some time to think. Robert, I know you got to bug out. Thanks for popping in, buddy. And then what we'll do is we'll have this session. I will stop the recording. I'll unmute everyone's mics, and they can yell at you and say hi and be silly, and then we'll be done. But I think for me, the sort of the reminder of this is really that you laying out these steps is if you've got to be realistic about each step and the work it takes, and that there are steps to do this. And it's a checklist. One's got to work to go to two. Two's got to work to go to three. You got to kind of go down the line, and you can't have 2 of the 6 and say, well, I'm close. Babe, I want to take a second mortgage on the house, and I want to quit my job because I got 2 of the 6. You really do need to find a match all the way through. So that's something that jumped out at me. Again, if anything's jumped out at you guys, feel free to leave it in the chat. And if you don't type anything here in a second, I'll wrap this up, and we'll turn off everybody needs to get dressed too, because I'm going to turn the cameras back on. So everybody get their clothes on here in the next few seconds. Scott will finish getting dressed. Well, Scott, what were you going to say?
I was going to say this, very interesting. You're talking about some of these things. My son, Randy, who manages a few pawn shops in Boise, Idaho, he said one day, isn't it funny where some gold nuggets come from?
Yeah.
My son, he says, Dad, there's 2 kinds of value. And I says, oh, do tell. He says, there's financial value and sentimental value. And especially in the pawn world, sentimental value, if you bring a tennis bracelet in that costs your husband, $3,000, and then you're getting divorced 4 years later and you want $3,000 for this bracelet, it might only be worth at pawn. It might only be worth, $150, but the sentimental value drives the person's mind who has this idea of value. And so the other thing is, what Dr. Linus Pauling said, to have a good idea, you've got to have a lot of ideas. And that's really the key. To have a good idea, you got to have a lot of ideas. And I guess finally, the money's the result of the successful pursuit of a goal. And your goal has to be to schedule meetings and present your product to industry. And that's ultimately your goal, is to get meetings to present your product to industry, because only then are you going to know if there's any value and if the customer is going to want this thing. Because again, to have a good idea, you've got to have a lot of ideas, and don't hang your hat on one idea, because you'll be probably disappointed.
Yeah, perfect. Well, Scott, I appreciate your time. Jeremy, I saw you pop up, and I muted your video again for the recording, and then I'll unmute those here in a second. Scott, I really appreciate your time. If someone wanted to figure out how they get a hold of you outside of this, what's your website, or how does that work in your world?
Okay, well, you can go to, I'll type it in as I say it. I've got a new site that I'm launching, but right now, theworkinginventor.com. Theworkinginventor.com.
So something they can go check out. You got a blog there. It's got links to your other resources. Yeah. And they can reach out to you. There's a contact form, or
there's contact form. There's
email or
all that stuff is there. Yeah. I'll give you info at inventthatnow.com. So here's an email address that goes directly to me, even though it's an info one. So that's an email address, goes directly to me. And
if they got questions or whatever.
Yeah, just feel free to, to contact me. And here's the cool thing, what I'm doing now is I'm just as a riff here, I'm starting to position what I do as consulting and helping inventors. I'm starting to position myself on a small scale, because I don't have the finances InventHelp or Invention Submission Company or Davison has. They've got tens of millions of dollars in their marketing budget for commercials and TV and so on. But I'm positioning my company now to continue to develop products and to turn out lots of products every year to help either develop a roadmap for someone to take their product to market, or I have a concierge business that I will develop, build a prototype, and present their product to industry. Whether it gets taken or not is another story, but I will give them the system so they can do it themselves after I run their product and idea and prototype through my system, the Working Inventor system. So it's just an offering because it's so difficult to maneuver and navigate these waters. So I want to give this. service to people. So feel free to contact me, read through my blog on the Working Inventor, email me through that site or at info@inventthatnow.com, and we'll sort things out for you.
Perfect. Well, I appreciate your time. I'm going to go ahead and stop the recording. And for those of you watching the replay, if you find this is valuable for someone else in your life, we'd appreciate you to share. You're probably watching this on YouTube or Vimeo or Facebook or one of those places. Feel free to comment and share. Scott and I'll do our best to keep up with the comments and get this out to somebody who might need to know this information. And feel free to reach out to Scott if you like. Thanks so much for watching. And let's go ahead and stop the recording.